The gunshot echoed across the windswept plains of Wyoming Territory, 1876, as Beatrice O'Malley watched her family's homestead erupt in flames. The outlaws had taken everything: her parents, her home, even her last shred of hope. The smoke billowed black against the setting sun, marking the end of the only life she'd ever known. "Pa, Ma." Beatrice sobbed, her fingers digging into the harsh, unyielding soil as she knelt on the ridge overlooking what remained of her family's 5 years of hard work. At 22, she was now utterly alone in a merciless frontier that had no patience for a woman without protection. The crack of a twig behind her sent Beatrice scrambling to her feet, fumbling for the small derringer hidden in her pocket, the only possession she had managed to grab before fleeing into the hills. "Easy there, miss," came a deep, steady voice. "I'm not looking for trouble." Through tear-blurred eyes, Beatrice made out the silhouette of a tall man against the darkening sky. His wide-brimmed hat cast shadows across features weathered by sun and hardship. A silver star gleamed on his vest. "You're too late, Marshal," she said bitterly, her derringer still pointed at him with trembling hands. "They've already taken everything." The man stepped closer, his spurs jangling softly. "Not a marshal, miss, just a cowboy passing through. Name's Quentin McCoy." Beatrice's arm dropped, the fight draining from her as suddenly as it had risen. "I've lost everything," she wept, her legs finally giving way beneath her. The cowboy moved with surprising grace for his size, catching her before she hit the ground. His calloused hands were gentle as he steadied her. "Now you'll gain everything in me," he answered, his voice low and resolute. "I give you my word, miss. Whoever did this will answer for it, and you won't face whatever comes next alone." Beatrice looked up at the stranger who had just made such an extraordinary promise. In his eyes, she saw something she had thought died with her parents' steadfast determination and unwavering principle. It wasn't hope, not yet, but perhaps it was the seed from which hope might grow. "Why would you help me?" she asked, her voice hardly more than a whisper. "You don't even know me." Quentin McCoy's expression remained solemn as he looked toward the burning homestead. "Because there was a time when no one helped me," he said simply. "And I swore I'd never let that happen to another soul if I could prevent it." He helped Beatrice to her feet, keeping a respectful distance while ensuring she was steady. "My camp is about a mile east. You'll be safe there tonight. Tomorrow we'll ride to Silver Creek and report this to Sheriff Donovan." "Silver Creek," Beatrice wiped away her tears with the back of her hand. "That's nearly 2 days' ride." "It is," Quentin confirmed, "but Donovan's a good man. He'll help us track down who did this." Beatrice cast one last glance at the smoldering ruins of her home. "There were 3 of them. I saw their faces." Her voice hardened. "I'll never forget them as long as I live." "That'll help," Quentin nodded, "but first you need food and rest." As they walked toward his campsite, Beatrice realized she hadn't even told him her name. "I'm Beatrice O'Malley," she said quietly, "though I don't know what that means anymore now that there's no more O'Malley Farm." "A name isn't just about land, Miss O'Malley," Quentin replied. "It's about who you are. And from what I've seen so far, the O'Malley name still stands for something mighty strong." The campfire cast dancing shadows across Quentin's weathered face as he handed Beatrice a tin cup of coffee. His campsite was sparse, but well-organized, the mark of a man accustomed to life on the trail. A magnificent sorrel gelding stood tethered nearby, occasionally stomping a hoof as if impatient for the morning's journey. "Drink this," he urged. "It'll help with the shock." Beatrice accepted the cup gratefully, letting its warmth seep into her cold fingers. She had stopped crying, but a hollow emptiness had settled in her chest, making it difficult to breathe. "They came at noon," she said suddenly, staring into the flames. "Pa was mending the fence line. Ma was hanging laundry. I was in the root cellar getting potatoes for supper." Her voice trembled but didn't break. "I heard the shots, 4 of them, then laughter." Quentin didn't rush her, didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply listened, his blue eyes intent on her face. They took the horses, the livestock, everything of value, then they set the fire. Beatrice swallowed hard. I couldn't get to Ma and Pa, the flames were too high, I had to hide until they rode off. You did what you had to do to survive, Quentin said quietly. Your parents would want that. What do you know about what they would want? Beatrice snapped, immediately regretting her harshness. I'm sorry, Mr. McCoy, you've been nothing but kind. No apology needed, Miss O'Malley. Grief has its own path. He set down his coffee and pulled a blanket from his saddlebag. You should get some rest. Dawn comes early out here. As Beatrice settled onto the bedroll he offered, exhaustion overcame her. Before sleep claimed her, she studied the cowboy who sat vigilant across the fire. There was something in his stillness, a readiness that spoke of a man who had faced danger more than once. Mr. McCoy, she murmured sleepily. Yes, Miss O'Malley, thank you for stopping. The cowboy nodded once, his expression softening momentarily. Rest now, tomorrow's ride will be long. Dawn broke harsh and bright across the Wyoming plains. Beatrice awoke disoriented, momentarily forgetting the previous day's horrors until reality crashed back like a physical blow. She sat up to find Quentin already awake, cooking a simple breakfast over a small fire. Morning, he said, handing her a plate of beans and salt pork. Eat what you can. We need to reach Carter's Creek by nightfall. Beatrice accepted the food, surprised to find herself hungry despite everything. How do you know this territory so well? She asked between bites. Drove cattle through here for 5 years with the Goodnight-loving outfit, Quentin replied, packing up his gear with efficient movements. Before that, I was a scout for the army during the war. That explained the military bearings she'd noticed, the way he assessed situations with calm precision. And now I work for myself. Take jobs as they come, cattle drives, bounties sometimes. He paused, studying her face. Though at the moment, my only job is getting you safely to Silver Creek. After breakfast, Quentin helped Beatrice onto his horse, then mounted behind her. Having him so close made her acutely aware of his presence, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the subtle strength in the arm that reached around her to hold the reins. His name's Ranger, Quentin said, patting the horse's neck. Best partner a man could ask for. They rode in companionable silence for several hours, the landscape gradually changing from open prairie to rocky foothills. Beatrice found herself drawing comfort from Quentin's solid presence. There was something steadying about a man who measured his words carefully and moved with purpose. Around midday, they stopped to rest the horse near a small creek. As Beatrice knelt to drink, Quentin suddenly tensed beside her. Don't move, he whispered, his hand moving slowly toward his holster. Heart pounding, Beatrice froze. Quentin's eyes were fixed on something across the creek. Following his gaze, she saw 3 riders emerging from the tree line. That's them, she breathed, recognizing the lead rider's distinctive red bandana, the men who attacked our farm. Quentin's expression remained impassive, but his eyes hardened. Stay behind me, he instructed, helping her to her feet. Let me handle this. The riders spotted them and pulled up their horses. The man with the red bandana grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. Well, what do we have here? He called out. Seems the little lady found herself some protection. You boys lost? Quentin asked, his voice casual though his posture was anything but not lost, Red Bandana replied. Just surprised to see the girl alive, thought we'd taken care of all the O'Malleys. Beatrice felt sick at the casual admission of her parents' murder. She clutched Quentin's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. I'd move along if I were you, Quentin suggested, his tone still conversational. Sheriff Donovan in Silver Creek is expecting us. The 3 men exchanged glances. Donovan, huh? Red Bandana spat on the ground. Well, that changes things, don't it, boys? Can't have witnesses making it to Silver Creek. What happened next occurred so quickly Beatrice could barely process it. As the first outlaw reached for his gun, Quentin drew with lightning speed. 2 shots rang out, and 2 of the riders tumbled from their saddles. The 3rd Red Bandana managed to fire, the bullet grazing Quentin's shoulder before a return shot caught him squarely in the chest. The sudden violence left Beatrice shaking, her ears ringing from the gunfire. Quentin checked each fallen outlaw methodically before returning to her side. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice gentler than she expected given what had just happened. "No," she managed, "but you are." Blood was seeping through his shirt where the bullet had grazed him. Quentin glanced at it dismissively. "It's nothing, barely a scratch." Despite his protest, Beatrice insisted on cleaning and binding the wound with strips torn from her petticoat. As she worked, she couldn't help noticing the web of old scars that marked his sun-bronzed skin. "You've been shot before," she observed. Quentin's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Hazard of the profession." Which profession, cowboy or good Samaritan? This time he did smile, briefly transforming his weathered face. "Both, I suppose." After Beatrice finished dressing his wound, Quentin methodically searched the dead men, collecting their weapons and anything that might identify them. "Reed Dalton," he read from a wanted poster found in one man's saddlebag. "That's our red bandana. Wanted in 3 territories for murder and robbery." "What happens now?" Beatrice asked, struggling to reconcile her desire for justice with the brutal reality of frontier law. "We still head to Silver Creek," Quentin replied, securing the outlaws' horses. "These men were wanted. There'll be a reward which rightfully belongs to you now." "I don't want blood money," she protested. "It's not blood money," Quentin countered gently. "It's restitution, and you'll need it to start over. Start over." The words hung between them as they mounted up again, leaving the dead outlaws for the buzzards already circling overhead. Beatrice hadn't allowed herself to think beyond her grief and anger, but now the future loomed before her uncertain and frighteningly empty. "I don't know how to start over," she admitted quietly as they rode. "The farm was everything." Quentin was silent for a long moment. "My family had a ranch in Texas," he finally said. "Lost it all in '65 when the war ended. I was 19, angry at the world. Thought nothing would ever be right again." Beatrice turned slightly to see his face. "What changed?" "Met an old drover named Elijah who offered me work on a cattle drive. Taught me that life doesn't end with loss, it just takes a different trail." He adjusted his hat against the afternoon sun. "You'll find your trail, Miss O'Malley. You've got the spirit for it." They reached Carter's Creek as dusk was falling, a small way station consisting of a stable, a tiny general store, and a rudimentary hotel. The proprietor, a stout woman named Mrs. Finch, took one look at Beatrice's tear-stained face and Quentin's bandaged shoulder and ushered them inside with motherly efficiency. "Land's sakes, you two look like you've been through the wars," she declared, setting out bowls of stew and thick slices of bread. "Rooms upstairs only got the one, but there's a screen I can set up for the ladies' privacy." After the meal, Mrs. Finch insisted on drawing Beatrice a bath, a luxury she hadn't expected but gratefully accepted. The hot water seemed to wash away not just the dirt of travel, but some of her paralyzing grief as well. By the time she emerged, dressed in a nightgown and shawl loaned by Mrs. Finch, Beatrice felt almost human again. She found Quentin sitting on the small porch, smoking a cigarette and gazing at the stars. He stood when she appeared, quickly extinguishing the cigarette. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Yes, thank you." Beatrice settled into the chair beside him. "Mrs. Finch said your shoulder wound is healing nicely. Told you it was just a scratch." He smiled faintly. "You should get some rest, Miss O'Malley. We've still got a long ride tomorrow." "Beatrice," she said impulsively, "please, after everything that's happened, I think you can call me Beatrice." Something flickered in his eyes, warmth perhaps, or understanding. "Beatrice, then, and I'm Quentin to my friends." "Are we friends, Mr. McCoy?" He considered this, his expression thoughtful. "I'd like to think we are, yes." A comfortable silence settled between them as the night deepened around the small way station. For the first time since the attack, Beatrice felt the tight knot of fear in her chest begin to loosen. "I've been thinking," she said at last, "about what you said about finding a new trail. And I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm starting to believe it might exist." She looked up at him. "Thank you for that." Quentin nodded once, understanding in his eyes. It's there, Beatrice, and you're strong enough to find it. They reached Silver Creek late the following afternoon, a bustling mining town nestled in a valley between two mountain ranges. To Beatrice, accustomed to the isolation of her family's homestead, the town seemed impossibly crowded and noisy. She stayed close to Quentin as they made their way to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Donovan proved to be exactly as Quentin had described, a solid, principled man who listened carefully to their story, his weathered face growing increasingly grim. Dalton and his gang have been terrorizing homesteaders across 3 counties, he confirmed. Miss O'Malley, I'm deeply sorry for your loss, and grateful to you, McCoy, for bringing this to a close. The formalities took hours, statements given, documents signed. By the time they finished, night had fallen again, and Beatrice was swaying with exhaustion. The hotel across the street has decent rooms, Sheriff Donovan advised. Miss O'Malley, the town has a small fund for victims of such crimes. It's not much, but it should cover your expenses while you decide what to do next. Thank you, Sheriff, but that won't be necessary, Quentin interjected. Miss O'Malley will receive the reward money for Dalton and his men. That should give her a proper start. Outside the sheriff's office, Beatrice finally asked the question that had been on her mind since their arrival. What happens now? Where will you go? Quentin hesitated, suddenly less certain than she had seen him before. I hadn't thought that far ahead, he admitted. I suppose I'll find work somewhere. Always need good hands for cattle drives this time of year. The thought of him riding away left Beatrice with an unexpected hollowness. In just 2 days, this quiet, steadfast man had become her anchor in a world turned upside down. I see, she said, trying to keep disappointment from her voice. Well, I'm grateful for everything you've done. Quentin studied her face in the lamplight spilling from the sheriff's office. What about you? Have you decided what's next? Beatrice took a deep breath, voicing the decision she'd been considering since their conversation at Carter's Creek. Mrs. Finch mentioned that her sister in Denver runs a millinery shop and needs an assistant. I've always been good with my hands. Perhaps I could learn the trade. Denver? Quentin nodded slowly. It's a good city, growing fast. You'd have opportunities there. An awkward silence fell between them, filled with unspoken words. Finally, Beatrice forced a smile. Well, I should find a room for the night. Thank you again, Mr. McCoy, Quentin, for everything. She turned to go, but his voice stopped her. Beatrice. When she looked back, his expression was uncharacteristically uncertain. Denver's west of here, he said. I was thinking of heading in that direction myself. If you'd allow it, I could escort you there, make sure you arrive safely. Hope flickered in Beatrice's chest. I'd like that, she replied softly. The journey to Denver took 5 days, during which Beatrice discovered more about Quentin McCoy than he had revealed in their first 2 days together. He was 31, had fought for the Confederacy, but harbored no lingering bitterness about the South's defeat, and possessed a dry sense of humor that emerged in unexpected moments. He spoke rarely of his family, though she gathered they had once been wealthy landowners before the war took everything. For her part, Beatrice found herself sharing memories of her parents, of the good years on the farm before the drought came, of her dreams of someday having her own family. Quentin listened attentively, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than mere politeness. By the time they reached the outskirts of Denver, something had shifted between them, a comfort, a deepening connection that neither acknowledged directly but both felt keenly. Mrs. Finch's sister lives on Larimer Street, Beatrice said as they rode through the bustling city streets. Her name is Mrs. Paulin Walker. The millinery shop was easy to find, a charming storefront with elaborate hats displayed in the window. Mrs. Walker, a plump, cheerful woman in her 50s, welcomed Beatrice warmly after reading her sister's letter of introduction. My dear, of course you can stay with me, she assured Beatrice. The room above the shop is small but comfortable, and I've been desperate for an assistant with a good eye and nimble fingers. The reality of Quentin's imminent departure settled heavily as they stood outside the shop afterward. He shifted uncomfortably, hat in his hands. "Seems like you'll be well situated here," he said, looking at anything but her face. "Mrs. Walker seems kind." "She does," Beatrice agreed, her throat tight. "Quentin, I don't know how to thank you properly. You've done so much." "No thanks needed," he interrupted. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Beatrice shook her head firmly. "Not anyone. What you said that first night when I'd lost everything, that wasn't ordinary kindness." Quentin finally met her eyes, and the emotion she saw there made her breath catch. "I meant what I said," he told her quietly. "Every word." They stood in silence for a moment, the busy street flowing around them like a river around two stones. Finally, Quentin placed his hat back on his head. "I should be going," he said reluctantly. "Got to find lodging before dark." "Where will you stay?" Beatrice asked. "There's a boarding house for cowboys over on Market Street. Should have a bed available." Beatrice hesitated, then gathered her courage. Would you come for dinner tomorrow? Mrs. Walker said I'm welcome to have a guest." The smile that transformed his face was answer enough. "I'd be honored, Beatrice." One dinner became two, then three. Quentin found work at a local livery stable, which kept him in Denver. As weeks passed, their evenings together grew longer, their conversations deeper. Beatrice flourished at the millinery shop, her natural creativity impressing Mrs. Walker and their customers alike. On a crisp autumn evening, nearly 3 months after they had arrived in Denver, Quentin took Beatrice to a small park near Cherry Creek. The leaves were turning, painting the landscape in brilliant golds and reds. "I received a letter today," he told her as they walked. "From a friend in Wyoming Territory. He's starting a cattle ranch near the Bighorn Mountains and wants a partner with experience." Beatrice's heart sank. "You're leaving," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "That depends," Quentin replied, stopping to face her. "On you, on me." He took her hands in his expression more open than she had ever seen it. "Beatrice, these past months have been the happiest of my life. I know you've built something good here, and I wouldn't ask you to leave it unless—" He paused, seeming to gather his courage. "Unless you felt what I feel, unless you could imagine building a different kind of life with me." Beatrice looked up at this man who had entered her life when everything seemed lost, this quiet, honorable man who had become so dear to her. "What kind of life?" she asked softly. "A hard one at first," he admitted. "Ranch life isn't easy, but it would be ours. Land of our own, a home we build together." His hands tightened around hers. "I love you, Beatrice O'Malley. I think I started falling in love with you that first night when you stood up straight despite your grief and looked those outlaws in the eye without flinching." Tears blurred Beatrice's vision, but they were different from the tears she'd shed the night they met. These were tears of joy, of possibility. "I love you too, Quentin, and yes, I can imagine that life. I want it." The kiss they shared was gentle at first, then deepening with all the emotion they'd held back for months. When they finally parted, Quentin pressed his forehead against hers. "I promised you'd gain everything in me," he murmured. "I intend to keep that promise for the rest of our lives." They were married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony at Denver's Episcopal Church, with Mrs. Walker beaming in the front pew. The journey to Wyoming Territory was long but filled with plans and dreams for their future together. The land Quentin's friend had secured was beautiful rolling grasslands backed by the majestic Bighorn Mountains. The cabin was rudimentary at first, but Beatrice transformed it with the same determination she had once applied to her parents' farm, adding curtains made from flour sacks and furniture crafted by Quentin's increasingly skilled hands. Their first year brought challenges: harsh weather, uncertain finances, the isolation of frontier life, but they faced each obstacle together, drawing strength from the love that had blossomed in the aftermath of tragedy. On their first anniversary, Quentin presented Beatrice with a handcrafted rocking chair for their front porch. As they sat together watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Beatrice placed his hand gently on her stomach. "I have a gift for you two," she said, smiling at his puzzled expression. "Come spring, there'll be 3 of us on this porch." The joy that spread across Quentin's face was answer enough. He knelt before her, pressing his lips to her still flat belly before looking up with tears in his eyes. "When I found you that night," he said softly, "I never imagined how much you would give me in return." Beatrice ran her fingers through his hair, remembering the broken woman she had been and the strength she had found through loving this man. "We gave each other everything," she corrected gently. "And we're just beginning." As the first stars appeared in the Wyoming sky, Beatrice and Quentin McCoy sat hand in hand, looking toward a future neither could have imagined on that terrible day when everything seemed lost, a future built on love that had emerged from the ashes of despair, proving that sometimes, in losing everything, we find what truly matters. Their daughter, Elizabeth, was born the following May, a strong, healthy girl with her father's blue eyes and her mother's determination. As the years passed, she was joined by 2 brothers, James and Thomas. The McCoy ranch prospered, becoming one of the most respected in the territory. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep, Beatrice would find Quentin on the porch, gazing at the stars. She would sit beside him, their hands automatically finding each other, and remember how far they had come from that smoke-filled day when she thought her life had ended. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" she asked once. "If you hadn't been riding by that evening," Quentin considered this, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I believe some things are meant to be," he said finally. "Not everything we make our own choices, forge our own paths, but you and me," he smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. "I think we were always heading toward each other, Beatrice. Everything before was just the journey." Beatrice rested her head against his shoulder, content in the knowledge that she had indeed gained everything in this man who had become her partner, her lover, her best friend. From the ashes of loss, they had built something beautiful, a love strong enough to weather any storm, a family bound by more than blood, a legacy of resilience that would endure long after they were gone. And that, Beatrice knew, was the greatest treasure of all.